In my hands right now is the latest product from Thrustmaster. We have the Ferrari 488 GT3 wheel add-on. And I'd say with this particular wheel, Piers, there are three main headlines.
Yeah, definitely. It's an officially licensed Ferrari product. It's also the first wheel that they've released since releasing their T818 direct drive wheelbase, which we very much like.
Yep.
And also, thirdly, it's an affordable wheel. It's going to be well within the regions or the cost that most people who own a Thrustmaster wheelbase can afford.
Yeah, so we're going to find out in today's video whether, first of all, if this is any good. We want to know, we want to tell you guys. And secondly, does it address some of our previous concerns about the steering wheel offerings from Thrustmaster? So stick around, watch the video, and find out the answers to those questions. So we've already had a look at this, but we're just going to show you what's inside the box. We of course have the main attraction, the steering wheel itself. Beyond that, we have a little box for some tools and some screws. This is the big one. We've got two quick release options. You've got a kind of traditional Thrustmaster quick release that you'll have found on Thrustmaster wheels over the past 7 or 8 years. And then we of course have the new quick release system that was used in the T818. However, Piers, this is slightly different to what we've seen before.
Yes, it looks like it's got 4 screws. You can see 4 locations for screws from the outside. And that's how you attach the quick release itself to the base on that.
Eventually.
Something like that. Again, we haven't done it yet, but it's a much more solid solution than we've had previously with other wheels.
When I first saw this, I didn't actually know the price of it when I first looked at it. And my first impression was, okay, this looks pretty nice from a distance. And I started pressing buttons and feeling around, and I have to be honest, my first thoughts were, this doesn't feel super premium. It feels a little bit cheap.
I like actually the way it feels in your hand. It's quite a big wheel. I think it's 300 millimeters across. We'll confirm that on the screen if it's not 300, but it's quite wide. It's quite solid. The grips actually feel quite nice in my hands. I like the shape of them, but the grips feel pretty plasticky. It's got a carbon fiber looking finish, but it's certainly not carbon fiber. It's just a sort of a layer on top of a plastic base with plastic bits and pieces. And I think it is actually metal shifters with magnetic actuation, but it definitely has that sort of plastic feel that we felt from some other Thrustmaster products. Not quite in the same respect. It's actually a lot more solid and secure and doesn't twist and creak as like the SF1000. We didn't know the price when we first opened this, and we actually discussed, we said if this isn't an inexpensive wheel, you would probably be disappointed.
The dials at the bottom, they're probably a bit worse. They just feel very light and cheap again, unfortunately. And then you can say the same about these kind of toggles here. I mean, that one goes up, down, left and right, and that feels okay. You've got a bit of wobble there. I don't mind how it feels, but then these at the top, there's just so much extra movement that doesn't feel like it needs to be there. You can twist it.
Again, we'll reserve judgment until we get it on the rig, but first impressions are, it feels like the price it is. We're not saying it feels bad because it is inexpensive, and that's clearly what they've aimed for.
Yeah, we should probably talk about the price because we mentioned it being cheap a lot. It's actually £199.99 for those of you in the UK. If you're talking about euros or US dollars, it's $249.99. That puts it in the price range, actually as a direct competitor, interestingly enough, to the Fanatec McLaren GT3 V2 wheel. And I actually have it with me because I own that wheel. I bought it maybe 3 weeks ago or something. So why don't we do a bit of direct comparison? Right, so I've got my McLaren GT3 V2 wheel.
Yes. First of all, they're very similar designed wheels by 2 different brands, and they're just replicated by our sims, so Fanatec with this one and Thrustmaster with this one. But this one straight away, if you look at the profile of the wheel, it's much thicker in pretty much every dimension. For me, it just feels that much more solid in every way. I don't know if you can hear the difference. The buttons are more solid on this Fanatec one. The same with the rotaries, the shifters especially.
That one's got a rocker on it.
I like a rocker, but again, that's the wheel design. The Thrustmaster and Fanatec are just copying the real design. This actually has clutch paddles.
Yeah.
Whereas the Ferrari does not. Again, that's partly the design. Of course, they're replicating a real world steering wheel, but it's just another addition.
But I mean, I would say honestly, this genuinely the same thing. I think when you compare the two of them, we did it obviously before filming this video. It was like buttons, I prefer the McLaren. Grip, I prefer the McLaren. Look, I prefer the McLaren. Again, not their fault. So yeah, it just every single area for me that's perceivable from not actually having it on the rig and the base. Unfortunately for Thrustmaster, I prefer that.
The reason we're talking about solidness as well is this is rock solid, the Fanatec one, and one of the main problems we've had previously with Thrustmaster wheels that we've tried here is
one over there.
We've got the SF1000, which is the one we've been using on the Thrustmaster T818, and One thing we didn't like about it is it didn't feel completely solid. In fact, I don't know if you can hear on my microphone, but when you're gripping and turning the wheel, which you will be gripping and putting a lot of force through this, especially on the T818, you could feel the wheel flexing. And also we felt that with the other one, which we've got kicking around somewhere. This one doesn't creak, and it's made of a metal base, but you can literally see the flex.
So we'll see obviously how this performs on the rig with the quick release system in, but I have to say, initially, if I do the same thing as Piers was doing there,
nothing.
Absolutely nothing. This feels completely solid. And this is an important thing, because the two biggest problems I had with the Thrustmaster ecosystem when I was reviewing the T818 was it felt like the steering wheels weren't strong enough to justify the power of the T818. This, based on the flex, might just be the thing that allows the T818 to prosper. There was another thing as well when I reviewed the T818. I felt like the quick release system was holding it back as well. The actual system on the base is okay, it clips in nicely, but it was actually the plastic section that was on the wheel. This, just to me, just didn't feel premium. It didn't feel completely trustworthy and solid. We've not had any problems with this one, but we have had problems with the second one, just because of that classic screw into the plastic design that Thrustmaster have had. The new quick release on this, though, solves the second problem as well, because the system Piers talked about earlier with the 4 screws, we believe this is going to make it more solid and make it fit better. So we're going to try that now.
So we've got the box with the tools in which came out of the box, and let's attach it and see if we've got everything that we need. 4 pre-thread locked screws, an Allen key, which has got torque, they're Torx, 2 Torx ends, and also, we've got some little pieces of rubber, which I imagine you can use to make quieter shifters. And also I've noticed there is some shifter adjustment options, so you can move the paddles either wider or narrower, and also closer or further from the grip. But let's get the quick release, and we'll put the T818 quick release on first, because that's what we're going to be testing this wheel on.
So this is honestly important steps, and this could be this wheel's saving feature.
I mean, it probably is.
Instantly looks so much more solid, because you've got a smaller gap there, and it just means there's less room for flex, to be honest. I mean, look at the difference there.
Yeah, because you've got all that leverage on the back of the base. You know, the further you get the axis of the way you hold the wheel to the quick release, the more leverage there's going to be. This instantly feels more solid. In fact, feel the plastic, John. The plastic there compared to that plastic there. That is way more solid. So they've definitely improved on that area.
Yeah, so we've had a look at it kind of out in the open. We've put on the quick release. I think it's probably about time we threw this on the T818 and see what it's actually made of. So we have the 488 GT3 wheel add-on on our T818 and on the rig. The shifters also, Piers, we talked about them being adjustable, and you found initially they weren't quite right for you.
Yeah, I bolted the wheel on, bolted the wheelbase on the rig, put the wheel on, literally did a couple of laps just to see you get an initial feel and make sure everything was working. And for me, the shifter paddles were too narrow, so I had to reach for them in my driving position. So I thought, you know what, why don't I adjust them, and then that'll mean that we can sort of see what it's like to adjust them. For now, we just moved them sort of wider. The screws that were on the paddles themselves were very, very tight. You'd ideally need your own tools to do it. If you've not got the strongest hands, then it would be a real struggle to adjust anything in terms of the paddles. But you can do it, the adjustment's there, which is great. And now we've got them in that sort of slightly wider position.
Right, we'll get driving then. So we decided to fire up Assetto Corsa Competizione for this, because of course this wheel matches exactly the wheel you can see in the game on the Ferrari 488, which is cool to see. They've done a great job of replicating the look. In terms of how the wheel actually feels out of the box, first thing I'm going to comment on is the rigidity. Now, we mentioned earlier in the video that this thing felt absolutely solid off of the rig, and also the quick release seemed to, give less opportunity for play in it, and I have to say that does translate well onto the rig. It feels very, very solid. I'm not getting any flex, absolutely no complaints there. It does feel solid, and that instantly ticks one of the big boxes for Thrustmaster wheels, especially when you're talking about the T818 base.
It feels like it's solid on the wheelbase, and we've run this at 100% force feedback. We've turned it down to about 80 on the T818 now, but we did run it 100% to start with, and it felt fine.
If we're going to talk about ergonomics, the grips and stuff like that, I don't love the feel of them. They're not super soft, but they do give you a solid grip. They're also quite thick, which is obviously down to personal preference. It's got a decent texture on it, so it's going to have decent grip, but it does, as we mentioned upstairs, it's not the most premium feeling plastic either, and it's not got much squidge to it, so after a long stint you might find a few pressure points start to build. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I was trying it without gloves before now, and even then I was feeling like I was having to grip it quite hard, and it just wasn't the most pleasant experience for me, but at the same time, I mean, when you're racing with gloves on, the main thing is durability and the grip you're going to get, and this feels fine. In terms of the buttons and stuff like that, it's kind of what we expected. Like these face buttons are pretty, basic. They don't feel super premium, but they do the job, and all the buttons work perfectly well when I press them. No problem at all. The directional buttons at the top, changing traction control and stuff, they actually work really well. I did comment earlier that they're a little bit loose when you start playing around with them left to right, but actually when you're pushing them up and down in the race car, no issues for me at all there. And you've got the little serrated section on top, which actually gives your thumb a bit of grip as well on top, which is quite nice.
There's actually quite a nice click. And the buttons, again, same very positive clicks. You know when you've pressed them. They're not too light, which is nice. Again, they're not the most premium feeling buttons, but they work, which is the main thing. But I think one thing that we need to talk about is the encoders.
Yeah, the rotary encoders are not perfect, and we thought they might not be based on the initial feel, but actually when you're using them, if I'm just changing brake bias here, the clicks are fairly positive. Like, you don't miss any major clicks as long as you turn it with enough force. The problem you've got is if you do like a half turn, I'm going to turn it to the right, but not quite all the way. Now, if I then go to turn left, it'll actually go up to 58.2 when it should have gone down to 57.8, and that is because when you do the half turn, you basically commit to the direction. So essentially, if I half turn to the right and then turn it back to the left, it's going to go one to the right. Now that's a small thing, and you can avoid it by doing a full-on click. But the problem is, in a racing situation, you don't always have the mental capacity and the time and the ability to be that precise on those. So I can see that being a problem for some people. Yeah, the other thing I'd say that carries over from previous Thrustmaster products is probably the shifters. There's nothing wrong with them. They feel absolutely fine. The actuation's clear. I've not missed a shift yet. There's adjustment there. There's things you can do to quieten them. There's genuinely nothing really to complain about. They're just not, making me think, oh, that's beautiful or that's absolutely stunning. So that kind of carries over, to be fair, from previous Thrustmaster wheels.
But something that is new is the lights on the wheel.
Yeah, for sure. So, like the real 488 GT3, you've got 4 telemetry lights on the wheel. You're going to get green and then orange and then red, and then they're going to flash at you when you get really close to the rev limiter. There are 2 modes with these lights as well. You can change them between Formula and GT. If we press these 2 rotary encoders down, which you can do, by the way, these do click, and then also press the AC flash button for 5 seconds, we now have essentially our telemetry menu. So you've got 2 blue lights and 1 red light to suggest you're in GT mode. You can use the right rotary encoder and flick it to the right, and then we lose the red light, we gain a blue light, and that means we're now in Formula mode. Another bit of adjustment you can do as well using the left rotary encoder is change the brightness of these lights. We'll leave it on the Formula one for now. You just press those 3 buttons again. There we are, so they're now blue. And basically what that does is it's blue when you don't need to change gear, it flashes when you do need to change gear, and if you go in too high a gear, too low revs, it goes red, which basically says, listen, you need to change down a gear. So it's just a different style of giving you this similar information, but it's a nice touch that you can customize that. We also have a couple of other lights on the outside that have different functionality.
Yeah, so the light on the left-hand side, which is not illuminated right now, is to do with the flag. So we've only ever seen the yellow flag, and then the yellow light, which you can see is illuminated now on the right-hand side, is a pit light. And from what we can gather, that yellow light on the right-hand side will illuminate when the pit window is open. So basically, it will be on most of the time. But also, if you don't want any lights on your wheel, you can just turn the brightness all the way down to 0, and then it will just work like a blank wheel. It would be nice to have a bit more adjustment, as you say, John. I'm hoping that they'll be able to make this feature adjustable in the MyThrustmaster app, which we'll come on to at the end of this video.
One thing I didn't mention previously was the compatibility of this wheel. Now, we're obviously using it on the T818 base, which is Thrustmaster's direct drive option. It is PC only, but this wheel does function with the other Thrustmaster bases. That's why you've got the 2 quick releases there. So essentially, this wheel is compatible with every single platform. And the telemetry lights actually work across PC, PlayStation 4 and 5, but not Xbox. That's just an Xbox-specific problem. Thrustmaster have also, peers, recently released an app, I believe, which allows you to kind of adjust some settings on the go.
Yes, the app, as I mentioned a moment ago, MyThrustmaster, is fairly new, I believe. I don't know exactly when it came out, but this is what it looks like. I'm screen recording, so I'll put it on the side of the screen now. But in the app, you can connect once you download the plugin from the Thrustmaster website. You can then enter here, do device tuning, so you can, for example, change the mode from either performance, sport, comfort to extreme. You can then apply it to your device. So for example, John, if I turn the force feedback down now, overall strength forces from 100 to say 50, I think it was 80 before, applies to the device. Can you feel that?
Oh, instantly.
Yeah, instant, so you don't actually have to leave the game, you don't have to alt-tab out. You can also change the RGB, so the color of the LED, so we've got it on a nice Traxion pink, but if I wanted to go to a nice Ferrari red, just drag it across there, and then apply to device, and instantly you can see.
Just in time for me to go off again.
I think it's a really nice feature, and actually something that Moser have been pioneering. And the same with the actual, the wheel as well. So we've got the Ferrari 488. Again, unfortunately, with the 488, there's actually no adjustment we can make, but you can also test the buttons. So John, if you start pressing some buttons now, you'll see that when he presses a button, you can then see it on the phone, and I'll overlay it over the video.
Yeah, and with some telemetry updates to the T818 as well, they're making a big effort, and this wheel is just one step in that big effort. Okay, I've had a bit of a play now, so why don't you jump on and give it a go yourself? Actually, just before you start driving, why don't we change the telemetry patterns on the base, because we've not tried that.
Oh, I've got rev lights now. Oh, that's cool.
It does look nice, and
that is really nice, actually.
So the whole hex is basically an LED strip, and you've got 5, I think, different pattern
options.
Oh,
that's cool, actually.
3 different pattern options, maybe?
Yeah, because that number 1, I've got sort of like green, yellow, red, and then it flashes blue when I need to change gear. That's really well executed. That's kind of pretty. So I'd done a couple of laps before we started filming, but literally just to get it all set up and make sure it was working. I've done about 3 or 4 laps now to get a proper feel for it while driving and actually concentrating a little bit. And I agree with pretty much everything you've said, John. I like it. It all works absolutely as it should, but it feels cheap. But again, it is a cheap wheel, so you know, what else were you going to expect?
Yeah, 100%. I think, generally speaking, you know, we've seen wheels from Thrustmaster before that feel like they will last a long time, but haven't given off that, you know, rig bling that other wheels can provide. But yeah, it does just fall short in terms of the actual quality. It feels like they've tried to save money with certain things like the buttons and stuff to facilitate the cheap price, which makes sense. That's how money and spending works in this business, but you can definitely notice that. That's kind of how I'd say. I think for me, the big thing with this is I do genuinely believe they've addressed the 2 biggest problems. I feel like this is chapter 1 of a new book, and it's going to be a great book, but there's a lot of growing still to do. That's kind of what I feel. If they can just, you know, work on those bits that we don't like as much, you know, and increase the range, if they keep those fundamentals fixed with the quick release, with the rigidity and the strength of it, I think the next, you know, number of years can be a positive one for Thrustmaster. So I think we've covered pretty much everything about this wheel. I don't know if there's anything else, Piers, that you wanted to add, but
nope.
No, that's it. So I guess that concludes our review. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. I want to know if you guys are going to be considering picking up this wheel. Of course, it's currently available on pre-order. We don't quite know the dates yet for when it's actually going to be released, but maybe by the time you watch this video, you guys will know that, and we maybe know that. But yeah, let us know in the comments down below. Will you be picking it up? What do you think of it? What do you think of Thrustmaster's recent moves? And yeah, subscribe to the channel for future hardware reviews and racing game videos of all sorts.
As always, thanks for watching, and keep it pinned.